Hey folks, welcome to a podcast about Catholic things. This is Eric, the ambassador of common sense, and I'm here with
Dan, the ambassador of nonsense. And by the way, the beer of the week is from New Belgium Brewing of Colorado and North Carolina. It's actually in both places, and the beer is the Hemperor.
We're going to have a beer of the week?
We're going to have a beer of the week. And this beer contains, it says, no traceable amounts of THC or CBD. So in one sense, maybe we're kind of reaching out to the West Coast there, but, they say that on the box. It's just for taste.
It's weird that they have to say that.
Well,
what do you mean it's just for taste? There's alcohol in it, right?
Well, yeah, the alcohol's there, but the hemp is just for taste. To blend with the hops.
Hemp beer.
Yeah, Hemperor. Hemp beer. Yeah, it has hemp, just no THC.
Who the heck likes the taste of hemp?
Well, I have to admit to kind
That's
of liking
weird.
The smell of it.
I've tasted hemp, and it doesn't taste good.
You don't like, well, if you tasted hops, you probably wouldn't like the taste of that either, to tell you the truth.
Actually, I'm getting to where I really don't even care for the taste of beer. For a lot of guys, that's like a sin, but I just
like
kind of
a
lost the
heresy of
taste
some
for
kind.
Alcoholic beverage.
Well, you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. As long as you don't get to the point where you're,
A teetotaler?
Well, it's okay for you to teetotal, but don't be judgy and hateful towards
preaching,
us.
Huh?
Exactly.
Every week I'm going to come up with a different reason not to drink.
Go join one of those Quaker groups or something like that if you want to be preachy about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking into it, so. All right, what do we... This week we're going to talk about Millennials.
Millennials, the snowflake generation.
Why are they so... And actually, are they wimpy? Is there really a problem here?
Is it wimpiness, or is it just that whatever sense of spine they have is misdirected, and it comes out as wimpy to us?
Or maybe they're just lazy.
Well, that could be too. But I heard some statistics about millennials that they're more, let's say, socially involved than other groups. But that could still be a laziness.
I don't think that
it could still be a laziness, because you can be socially involved by getting together with a group of friends and having fun doing projects together.
Mm-hmm.
You can be socially involved by hopping onto your computer and firing off tweets.
Yeah, they think they're involved that way.
Yeah.
They think because they tweet, they're involved.
But
I've met them who are like that.
Yeah, there are a lot of them like that.
I was talking to this millennial, and she goes to the college here at UC, and she was in one of the local, I don't know, Starbucks or something.
Mm-hmm.
And out of the blue, I guess this guy came in who, I guess he looked a little bit older than college age, and there was a bum in there, or at least someone who looked like a bum, kind of sitting there. And the guy attacked him and just started beating the hell out of him.
Whoa, wait a minute.
And this is in a college, this is UC. There are lots of guys around who are big college-age kids.
He started beating up this bum?
Yeah.
Wow.
They didn't say anything. There wasn't an argument first. He just came up and started wailing on him. And I said, well, were there other people there, like other guys who could assist? She said, yeah, there was a bunch of people there. I said, what did they do?
I bet they all pulled out their cell phones, didn't they?
Yeah. Yeah, they got their phones out.
Yeah. I'm not
going
to intervene.
With people that they would do that?
I'm going to pull out my cell phone. That's the socially responsible thing to do, right? I'll pull out my cell phone and record it.
Yeah,
then
I'll
I
record
can post it on Twitter.
And then I could make people know so that people have knowledge of it.
Look how evil this is that people can do this to somebody else. And now I've done I've become involved socially, haven't I?
Yeah,
That's kind of despicable, actually.
It is, absolutely. I have to. Okay, if that happened 20 years ago, the college kids of that age, would they have gotten involved?
I like to think that at least a lot of the college age kids that I know would have. And let me be clear here. I went to Rose-Hulman, which is a great school for engineers. But the most of the guys that I've met after getting out of school, who I find out, oh yeah, they also went to Rose-Hulman. If you meet them, you kind of think cave dweller. Not in the sense that they're low brow or anything like that, but in the sense that they tend to have kind of like the pasty skin, the kind of people who look like they don't really get out much. They,
Yeah.
Kind of the, you might
They look
think
like
softy,
engineers.
Softy,
Yeah.
but I mean, like compared to say engineers from Purdue who don't have that same look. But here's the thing: the guys that I went to college with at Rose-Hulman, they would have intervened in something like that, in spite of being nerd engineers.
I would have intervened. I can't imagine not at least.
Yeah. It's
maybe,
like, dude, what are you doing?
Even if you just try to talk him down.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have.
You yell from him a distance. Hey, get away from him. Whatever.
Yeah, I would have gotten in.
Okay, so multiple levels of wimpishness in the millennial generation. What is going on?
I hear some people blame the attack dog feminism that has been kind of up front for the past, I don't know, 20 years maybe, 30 years.
Yep.
Where men, because we did a show about whether or not men were toxic or toxic masculinity and what it is.
Right.
And,
yeah. And by the way, this
if,
wimpishness, that's the new masculinity. That's the non-toxic, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, if men are taught to stand up and fight is toxic, then what do you expect your boys are going to do?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it goes beyond that. When you bring up feminism, one of the interesting in the sense that it's self-defeating and kind of, I want to say paradoxical, but not just paradoxical, but truly self-contradictory aspects of feminism is that its aim has seemed to be from the beginning to eliminate the idea of femininity, to eliminate the idea that women are different. Well,
yeah.
If you want to eliminate that, you also have to eliminate the idea that men are different. And so
Certainly.
a key teaching, a key strategy of feminism has to be to reshape masculinity to look just like whatever their model is of femininity. And both of them end up losing it. And that's the thing. It's not like, okay, these toxic men are acting like women. They're not, because you know what? 20 years ago, women would have stepped in too if they had seen that.
Right.
But they would have stepped in for different reasons and different internal mechanisms that would have prompted that than men. But the point is, you destroy femininity and masculinity. You try to destroy everything that differentiates them. And what you end up doing is destroying what lets men contribute as men to, say, society, and what lets women contribute as women.
You got a bunch of this group of millions of people who are all androgynous.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the kind of millennial wimpishness we're looking at. It's this kind of androgyny that doesn't stand either as a man or as a woman.
I sometimes what do you think about this? There are lots of men out there who simply act that way or have trained themselves to act that way because they think that's what women want. Women want sensitive men, and they will get further with a woman if they act like this, and it just becomes part of their person.
I think that happens.
Yeah.
I don't think it's all that happens, but what's kind of interesting is that yes, it happens, but okay, what's going on when that's happening? It's kind of the exception that's proving the rule. It's like, okay, wait a minute, that's men acting like men in response to a misrepresented face of womanhood, and it kind of reinforces, if you could analyze it and see that for what it is, it reinforces the idea that, wait a minute, there really are differences between men and women, and they would do a lot better to embrace that.
Yeah. I don't know. The worst part about this is I don't know if there's a solution that we can that we can take any practical moves on, even as a society, even if we were all agreed on it. I don't know if there's any way to fight this problem that we can actually do.
Well, not maybe perhaps on a broad socially applicable scale, other than praying for the church to, kind of recover and resume its own balance. to try to be more of a model of leadership for both men and women. But there's another, I think, cause of this modern millennial snowflake phenomenon. And I don't know how extensive it is. It's kind of awkward, and I'll say what it is, and then I'll say why it's awkward for me to talk about, and it's this. I think the pre-millennial parents, the ones who are raising these wimpish millennials, I think part of the blame lies with them and a certain wimpishness on their part. And the wimpishness that I think they are exhibiting is this idea or somehow this feeling that they have to get affirmation from their children, that somehow they have to be, I'm going to use the word cool, in their kids' eyes in order to have a feeling that they're worthwhile in their kids' lives.
That they're good parents.
Exactly. And now, I mean, think of our parents. Did our parents worry one whit about being cool in our lives? I mean, in our eyes,
They probably would feel like failures if we thought they were cool.
Probably. Now, the irony is that we actually think our parents are really cool, but
Yeah.
I mean, we look at some of their quirks, and sometimes we talk about, maybe that oh yeah, Dad always does this or Mom always does that, whatever. But the thing is, we've developed, as adults, we see, oh wow, our parents, wow, the level of strength and so on and so forth that they've shown throughout their parenthood is tremendous and a model to be pursued for our own
we
parenthood.
stand back in admiration at it and strive to be more like that.
But nothing that they've ever did was calculated to look cool in our eyes. They were confident. They were strong. They had confidence in their own sense of manhood, womanhood, parenthood.
Right.
They had their own groups of friends.
They didn't try to hang out with our friends.
Yeah. And I think these pre-millennial parents, our generation, many of them somehow decided that they need to be cool to their kids' friends, and so forth, in order to, I don't know, feel like they were doing life right. And now here's why it's awkward for me to talk about, because the fact is I am in many ways pretty cool to my kids, but it's not because I feel like I need to be cool to my kids. It's just because my kids happen to have a lot of the same, for example, sense of humor that I do. So when I think something's funny, they tend to think it's funny too. When they think it's funny, I tend to think it's funny too. But
see, this is awkward for me, because I don't know if I should say anything or not. But I hear your kids talk when you're not around.
You what?
I hear your kids talk when you're not around.
And they think Dad's such a goober, and they talk about dad jokes and stuff like that.
You're not as cool as you think you are, dude.
Well, see, there you go. Okay, I don't try, and I don't make the grade. Yeah. So maybe what that means is that I have polite kids who are saving my feelings.
They are very polite.
Or at least they think they're saving my feelings. But, I think there are a lot of people, our generation, who went down that path with parenting. And I think the result, at least in part, is this millennial weakness that kids have.
The thing is...
Oh, and why does this cause wimpishness among millennials? It's because then, with their parents as the, say, most prominent, people that they kind of associate with growing up, they come to think that in order to be right, the whole world has to be cool to them. The whole world has to be their kind of world. And if it isn't, then there's something wrong with it, and they just shy away from it, and they have that sense of selfishness that leads to the kind of wimpishness that we're seeing. That's a theory I'm putting out there, a hypothesis.
And I'm sure, actually, there's probably a whole host of reasons, and I don't think you'll ever be able to point to one reason and say, this is it, this is where we went
Probably
wrong.
not. I think, I think it's maybe... In part, I think a lot of the so-called reasons are, I think I'm one of those guys who is a believer in the the enemy, as Jesus spoke of him, the devil, creating plans and trying to bring about the fall of the church within world history, within time, and within society. And I think this is the latest round. Whatever the collection of reasons are, I think this is the latest round. And that's why I said I think really the only thing we can really do is pray for the church and work to build up the church, rebuild the church.
I wonder, speaking of the church, I wonder if a certain amount of people looked in the church's history and looked at times of persecution where Christians were arrested and put to death, and Christians didn't decide to raise up an army. Instead, they hid from the law as much as they could, and if they were discovered, they refused to give up their religion, and they were put to death, and they did that bravely. And I wonder if there's kind of a warped sense of lay down and let people walk all over you, and that's how you maintain peace. And eventually you win that way by allowing evil to happen.
Kind of like a Mahatma Gandhi thing.
Right.
Could be. That's it would be tempting to think that, and it would even be tempting to not only think that that's what's going on, that people have sort of developed that, as you say, warped sense of peace. It would even be tempting to kind of internalize and pursue that as a means to a better peace if, and this is a great big if some of the trends in the church today, and I'm talking about certain bishops out there,
right?
I'm talking about certain things that even we've heard from the Pope, if the trends we've heard today did not have this feel to them of trying to change the church into something that it should never be.
Yeah. I don't, again, I just, when I think about that, I think it's not exactly what Christians did in history. And, also it's a warped, strategy. It's not, It's like an evil version of that strategy.
Because Christians have always done whatever they could do in order to promote the church, to grow the church, to strengthen the church, to spread the faith, and so forth.
And if there was a society, that could fight for the church, they did.
Yeah, right. It's only when they were up against, there's no other option. It's either give up my faith or face penalties, punishments, including death, that they took that course.
Right. And even in cases where it's like, in cases where you're, say, put in a situation where, like, the gladiators. Mm-hmm. They nab a Christian, make him a gladiator, shove him in there, and we've seen this in movies, and the gladiator said, no, I'm a Christian, I can't fight.
Yeah.
This is a case where he's being asked to fight for his own gain.
Right. For his life over the other gladiators.
Even if all the Christians, which there weren't many at first, were going to band together and say, let's fight the government and take over the government so that we don't have to hide anymore, that wouldn't have been at all prudent because they wouldn't have won.
Right. And that's exactly. And the same thing.
As opposed to the world saying, let's stop this guy named Hitler and band together and fight and kill people. And
they did. I mean, they fought a war, and like you said, they killed people to do it, but it was both a reasonable and a appropriate goal to go after.
Yeah. And just as it was with slavery here in America, and I think someday it'll be necessary for abortion.
Abortion as well, right? That's kind of scary because that could come in our lifetime or in our children's lifetime, and that's where even if we can't quite pinpoint the source of this kind of millennial snowflakiness, I think it's important to try to at least identify some remedies for it.
Right, because it's scary to think of the fact that we're going to be depending on these people, and
maybe for our own lives, because in addition to abortion, there's a growing.
There's that other end.
Exactly. The society's growing sense that, you know what, when you have become useless to us as society, it's time to do away with you. That's, you should be recycled. And it's kind of fun. I don't know whether the makers of the movie intended it to have this same kind of horrific response that it gave me, but I watched the movie Waterworld with Kevin Costner, which kind of a stupid movie.
Shyamalan movie?
No, it wasn't M. Night Shyamalan. This is before him.
Waterworld.
I'm pretty sure it's before him.
Okay, yeah.
It's one of those movies.
I think I saw that a billion years ago.
Yeah, it went so far over budget because of some of the filming problems they had, especially with some of the underwater scenes and stuff like that. But the thing is, it wasn't even really a movie worth watching. But there's this one part where this one community, that the idea is that the whole Earth is covered with water, and so these various communities of people have survived on the surface with these floating cities or whatever.
Yeah.
And they have this one city, and they have this idea of people being recycled, and I'm putting that in air quotes. Basically, they're killed so that their molecular, their biological content can be put into fertilizer and other things for the city.
Soylent Green is people.
Kind of a Soylent Green thing, exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether the movie makers intended that concept to have the horror that it had for me, but that's the kind of that's the trajectory we're on.
Yeah.
I hope it has that kind of horror for the people who are listening to us, and maybe for a few people beyond that.
Yeah. The thing is, it's one thing to look at even a big group of people and see their failure to step up and just take on responsibilities and take on manhood and stuff like that.
Especially in what okay, let's clearly recognize an exceptional situation versus the normal grind of daily life.
But even then, people fail. And, in my own life, I can point to some really shameful times where I didn't step up. I didn't fight when I should have fought. Mm-hmm. But I don't talk about them because it is shameful, and I recognize it as shameful. Yeah. And we're at a weird point where that's no longer the case, where people who lay down and give up are recognized as or thought of as being strong.
That's the real
so backwards.
Wimpishness. Yeah, that's the real wimpishness of the millennial generation, is this idea that to fail is somehow a show of strength.
Yeah.
And of whatever you want to call it, manliness or appropriate there's no they've lost the sense of shame and failure. And they, I don't know whether it's because they can, there's a whole group of people failing right along with them. And so it's just, oh yeah, here's my failure. What's your failure? That kind of a thing. I don't know, but, and I think that's the scarier aspect of it. Isn't that they tend to fail. It's that they embrace it as normative.
Yeah. And the other problem with that is that despite that, way of thinking, we're a fallen people, and so there are still men out there, young men, who have violent tendencies, and those men are not fought against and stopped. And so you've got some millennials who are doing really violent things, Yeah. And they think, well, if we all stop fighting, then these couple people who are really bad for society will stop, and they'll see how great life could be. I don't know what they're thinking, but
that's I don't
need
know
to
the thought process either.
Punish these people and get rid of them and get them out of society. Instead, we just keep trying to show them the right way to be by not fighting back.
I don't even.
And
it's
kind of like
deep.
we don't put people to death. Because we're better than that, and it's like, well, people need that.
Yeah, some of them. I don't even think it's that deeply considered, though. I think it's more of a, hey, wait a minute, look at that. Here's the thing that that you know, I feel like I'm one of those people that you know, like one of those polar people that kind of revolve around a single pole, and everything is about that one idea. And it's like, okay, well, you can talk about, you know, a trip to the moon, but it's really about this. And you can talk about, you know, deep ocean exploration. And it's really about this. Okay, I'm one of those people, and unfortunately, I keep getting that way about abortion.
Yeah, I was going to say that because I'm one of those people too, and I think abortion is such a huge part of it.
Yeah, I think it's the idea that, oh, there's us, and then there's the other people that aren't really worthy of being considered by us. And so there's this concept that instead of valuing them as people, instead of valuing the person who's turning violent and trying to step in and stop them and say, no, you shouldn't be that way, and kind of going for that encounter, or instead of trying to stop the person who's getting beat up, or instead of trying to stop our own kids from going the wrong way, whatever it is, instead of stepping into that encounter for the sake of the other, we just regard it as it's not us, so it doesn't matter as much. And I think that's behind abortion as well. Well, that unbaby, it's not us, doesn't matter as well. That old person, it's not us, it doesn't matter as well.
And I wonder if there was some of that in Nazi Germany. I mean, Jews, this, you know, Mr. Goldstein down the street. It's not me, so I better keep my mouth shut because I don't want to get in trouble. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. That's and so it's not. I mean, well, hey, the fact that it's not us, and therefore I don't consider their behaviors to matter. So what I'm going to do is pull out my phone and film it so I can get some hits on Twitter and whatever else and get you know, entertainment out of it. There's no shame in that because, hey, he's not us anyway. And I think that the modern abortion, I think that's the modern abortion mentality.
Yeah, it's a shame.
That's so there I am. I'm that guy.
Yeah. So I wonder, I don't know, there's got to be something we can do that will at least work towards changing it.
Yeah. You know, I think it starts in our own families and in the church.
Yeah.
That's you know, there's I recently heard an interview, and I forget what the author's name, on Al Cresta's show, you know, Cresta in the Afternoons. And he interviewed this guy who wrote a book talking about, I think it was the 7 revolutions of Christianity. And they were kind of, as he was describing them, some of them were more conceptual revolutions, like the revolutionary idea that all people matter, which when Christianity first kind of burst forth on the scene of the Roman Empire, that was a completely revolutionary idea. Yeah, it was a true idea within the Jewish nation and the Jewish community among the Israelites. They had that same idea amongst themselves, but even they misapplied it a lot, right? You know, you know, and Jesus took the Pharisees to task for that and that kind of thing. But as kind of an idea within the Roman Empire, just this idea that all people matter, including the slaves, for example, including newborn babies, for example, which back in the Roman times, if somebody didn't want a baby and had one, they would just, you know, throw it out, get rid of it.
Maybe even turn it into a virtuous thing and offer it up to the gods.
Yeah, exactly. It was I don't know if they had human sacrifice in the Roman temples or not, but yeah, that there was no concern for, well, it's just a baby, just a child, whatever. But and there were several others, you know, that the guy of this book described. But the thing is, I think that's the idea, is that as these things occur within society, we see it's really the church over and over again, and sometimes the church itself needs to be renewed in some way, like people refer to the Counter-Reformation, which actually it's kind of funny because there was really a reform going on inside the church before the Reformation really even happened. So a lot of the changes that we call the Counter-Reformation weren't really a reaction to the Reformation. They were a internal renewal that were already underway.
Okay, so when the Reformation, what period would you say that was? What century?
18th, 19th centuries.
Okay. I think, because I'm thinking there was a lot of
Henry
that going
VIII,
on that...
Martin Luther.
Okay. Yeah. During the 13th century, we had things were bad, and we had St. Francis of Assisi come along, who really did revolutionize a lot of things.
Yes.
And I guess, during that period, they were due for something else because things had gotten bad again. And I think right now, things have gotten bad again, and something has to happen, but we kind of have to depend on God. At the same time, we have to fight it wherever we see it.
Yeah. By the way, 16th century would be Martin Luther.
Okay.
So a little bit earlier than what I was saying.
16th century, so 300 years after St. Francis.
St. Francis, right. But see, that's the point. Okay, sometimes the church itself needs renewal, but within broader society, there's always this tendency for society to devolve exactly the way it's doing now.
Yeah. It's
the church that can bring new life to that and to bring a better way to people. I don't feel like any solution can be achieved outside of building back up the church and praying for the church.
Yeah. I think I guess if it does come from the church, it's not in any time soon. It's not going to come from the Western world. But although I do hear things about the African church and the Asian church right now.
Yep.
But I guess I don't. It's going to have to come from the church to really push society as a whole. But as you said, in our own families, we can continue push our boys be men and not shield them or baby them, and show example by accepting responsibilities, stopping to fight when you have to fight, even if you get your butt kicked, I guess.
Yeah, being willing to take
things
on some
like
pain.
That.
Yeah, take one. They say for the team, so to speak.
Take one for the team.
It's Team Christ, right?
Right.
Because that's what matters. So.
Right. I guess.
And teach our girls to expect that of men.
Right. That's a big one. I mean, see, I don't understand a whole lot here, but I don't think women find it attractive of men to act like girls.
I can't imagine. Yeah, that's.
I know that my experience with women is that they find that disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, my own wife finds it disgusting when, if I start whining about things, it's kind of looked down upon.
Yeah, I mean, there's, an expression, man up.
Yeah.
That is apropos in a lot of situations.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of reflecting on that. I mean, okay, women really, it's not womanly to complain either, but when, a lot of times when a woman I think a lot of times the conflicts between men and women come up, women are talking about problems they have. Okay, there's a problem, and what they're talking about is not the problem itself, but the reason it's a problem for them. So they're going on, with the complaints about it. And this is a relationship thing. Okay, they're just looking for a man who will understand them and let them do that and not get defensive about it and not get whiny and start bringing up his own counter list of complaints and stuff like that.
Right.
But they're also not necessarily looking for a man to start talking about solutions right away because they want to.
No, never.
But that's what men tend to do.
Don't you dare fix things.
Who cares about your problems? Let me give you the solution to the situation.
Yeah. You're minimizing.
That's you when you were saying that about your wife telling you to man up when you get whiny. That just kind of reminded me of that. I was thinking about that earlier today.
See, the audience doesn't realize all the technical difficulties that we're having, and they're going to see a 30-minute talk, and they don't realize it's been like an hour for us.
Oh yeah,
because that's all going to be cut out. But I think that's all I've got.
Okay, all right, yeah, that's there is let's summarize a real problem with millennial wimpishness. Which in some parts is true wimpishness, in some parts is laziness, in some parts is just a fundamentally incorrect attitude towards other people, other human beings, a disdain for other types of human beings, whatever you want to call it. And the solution starts, the solution is not some program. The solution is our own families and the church.
Yeah, and other relationships with men.
Yeah. It starts with us. That we who recognize it have to just keep being models and examples, and which may cause us to undergo some pain,
discomfort
at some point. Yeah. Hey, by the way, before we get into the current events, last time we talked about jobs and work and that kind of stuff, and I meant to bring up, and I forgot. I can't believe this. Apologies to St. Joseph that I forgot this. We talked about, okay, if you feel like the job isn't right for you, okay, you look for another job, but you got to be patient. You've got to be persistent and pray.
Yeah.
And I prayed for months to St. Joseph before I got the job that I had. And there's a novena prayer to St. Joseph that I use. I continue to pray that novena prayer every day. And the intentions, I have a kind of a ongoingly fluctuating list of intentions.
Yeah.
One of which is just thanking him for the blessings that I've received through his intercession. But so I got this job at a company, and it was a good job. It was a fun job, doing things that I enjoy. I'm a software engineer, and they write software for devices that need to go through FDA approval. But here's the thing. Like 6 months after I joined the company, I had no clue that this was the case when I joined it. 6 months after I joined the company, I went to the president of the company to ask, whether I could get a small donation for my son, for some missionary work that he was going to do. And the president said, well, we have a foundation. I said, oh, no, I didn't know that. And he said, yeah, how would $500 sound? Wow, it's very generous. Okay, cool. So anyway, so then a couple weeks later, he gave a lunchtime presentation to the company to talk about the foundation, make sure everybody knew that it was there and what it was for, and so on and so forth. This is a foundation. It's supported. It's actually a fund that's run by a foundation. The fund itself is supported from profits of the company, and the fund is a charity donation type fund. And he listed 4 different types of charities that they donate to.
Yeah.
To kind of guide the decisions of the foundation and the funds and stuff like that. The very first one was helping single mothers and protecting the unborn. That's the very first one. The very last one was activities that support the Roman Catholic Church.
Huh.
This is a company whose profits directly fund a Catholic foundation, not run by, associated with the Church Catholic, but a foundation that is dedicated to supporting the church and the church's charity activities. Wow. So it's like St. Joseph came through for me in a way that I never even realized until 6 months later.
I heard St. Joseph's a slow mover.
Well, okay, maybe I'm just slow on the uptake. But my point is, pray to St. Joseph if you think that the job you're in is not the job you need, and be patient about it. Pray to him every day and give him time to work.
Yeah.
So I should have said that on our last podcast. I wanted to bring it up and make sure that it got out there.
Okay. Sounds cool.
All right. So what do you got?
Current events. All right. So there's this report from NASA that there's a huge meteor explosion in the Earth's atmosphere in December of 2018. Now, I don't understand why they're just now telling us about it, or it's one of the largest. It's 10 times more powerful than an atomic bomb, than the atomic bomb dropped in Hiroshima.
Okay.
So, it's the second largest of its kind in 30 years. I don't understand why they're reporting it now. They're saying it was largely unnoticed because it was above Russia's, let's see if I could say this, Kamchatka Peninsula.
Uh-huh.
So that's kind of weird how they report that almost a year later.
Like an afterthought?
Half a year. Yeah, like, by the way, there was this giant explosion.
Yeah.
Unless they didn't actually see it happen, maybe they only have evidence that it happened.
Based on some seismic instruments or something like that.
Yeah, it seems like all the
do
big...
they think it was an explosion? I mean, could it have been like a meteor hit or something like that?
They're saying explosion.
Okay.
It happens in the air when that happens.
Yeah.
Because as the meteor's falling, it's getting hot and it explodes, usually before it hits the ground.
Ah, right. Okay.
And the last time that happened, a really big one, it was in Russia.
Yeah.
It always happens in Russia.
That's
It broke buildings and stuff last time. I wish it would happen here. Well, actually, what I wish is that I could travel to where it happened, because what you do is you search the ground under those areas and you find meteorites. And
right. Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Anyway, so that happened. There's this President Trump. He recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights.
Yep.
Which is a big thing, huge thing. Syria seems kind of upset about it, and I'm sure a lot of those Eastern nations are.
Yeah.
And the really odd things is that the Democrats have come out kind of against. I think the Democrats are going to lose the Jewish vote. I don't see how they can't at this point.
I know. They're so, especially with it coming out about both Democrat and left association with very outspoken anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic people and organizations. That I don't see how a conscientious Jew votes for Democrats.
Right. Or gives them money.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, that includes a huge part of Hollywood.
Yep.
But I guess, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, I still scratch my head at this, that the Democrats are being so bold about it.
Well, we'll see. I mean, maybe they're playing a gambit. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so remember Caesar Sayoc? How do you say that guy's name? Caesar Sayoc. He's that guy who was sending out mail bombs to Democrats.
Oh, yeah.
And they found him in this van that had Trump posters all over it, but it all looked like it had been kind of created just for show. That's what... Most people don't think he's an actual right wing. Most people think he's a left... I think he's a left-winger trying to make us look bad.
That doesn't sound too far off to me. I mean, look at the other, fake right-wing, fake, attack hoaxes and stuff.
Fits right in there.
It does fit right in there. It would just be one more of a kind. It wouldn't surprise me at all to learn that turns out to be the truth.
Yeah. Well, he just pled guilty.
Yes.
I think 65 felonies. And I don't know. I don't even know if he's been sentenced yet. But nobody's talking about where you see it reported, like at CNN. You're not seeing much about where he stands, really, and it doesn't seem like anybody did any kind of real journalism to figure out, is he really a right winger?
Yeah, what's his deal exactly?
And of course, the big news right now, the Mueller report is out, and
that's right.
What we always knew is true. I hear that CNN's Rachel Maddow was crying over it.
Oh, wow.
Because our president is not a traitor, so that's a good reason to cry.
That's the big sad news of the. It's, but I mean, oh gosh, I think that's another. It's another example. The whole Russian collusion trumped up. I'll go ahead and throw the pun out there. Is just one more example of why we are so ready to suspect, somebody like Caesar Sayoc as being just another, whether it's a patsy or, some kind of not what it looks like on the surface deal.
Right.
So, yep, but it's kind of funny because I think the people who were serious about getting on with running the country and trying to do what's right, I think they never gave it much credence anyway.
Yeah, they didn't, but a lot of Republicans did, who could have done a lot of good
in the meantime
if they had stood behind Trump.
And there will be some who still won't.
Right, I think I think for most of them it was just an excuse not to. But the thing is, everybody was so focused on it. I think Donald Trump got a lot done that he might not have gotten done if people weren't so preoccupied with the Mueller investigation.
Yeah.
Because he has done
true.
an awful lot.
That's true. He's been very successful. That's it's. I mean, I honestly think I'm beginning to think of him as another Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, definitely. I'm starting to think of him as another Abraham Lincoln.
Could be.
Yes.
Put Lincoln slavery, Trump abortion. If he manages to keep on the track he's on, and things, could be.
I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So that's all I got for.
All right.
Events.
Well, I've got in Texas today. This is from the Nation of Nonsense. Texas passed a bill. This is a few days ago, legalizing. It is now legal for children to run lemonade stands in the state of Texas.
Oh, yeah, I know where that
How about
comes
that?
from. Yeah, do you remember that?
No.
Some dude called the cops on this kid because he was running a lemonade stand.
Was that in Texas?
I don't know if it was in Texas or not, but I know, like, within the past 6 months, it was a news item because, like, local talk shows were all talking about it. And
I bet it was. There's probably a few states where that's an issue, but,
somebody called the cops, and the cops came out, and I think they all bought lemonade. Some guy was just being a jerk.
A jerk, yeah,
just,
okay.
I don't know, grumpy old man.
So who knows? And but now it is legal for a child to set up a lemonade stand in the state of Texas.
So you have to pay taxes, though.
I don't know. That's probably depends on the purpose, whether he establishes himself as a not-for-profit organization or something like that.
If I lived in Texas, I would get my kids to somehow take advantage of this and break out some giant lemonade restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
And make tons of money and be like, no.
What's just a lemonade stand? All right.
Did you ever hear that song, Hot Dog Stand?
No.
That it's a bluegrass song about a guy who someone leaves him some property that's no good in the hills of Tennessee, and he gets a loan and builds a giant hot dog stand, and things start developing, and he's renting buildings out, and then his neighbor, who's a farmer, his taxes go way up, and he says, and he's bound to sell, and I'll buy him out and build another hot dog stand.
Oh.
Yeah. I think it's by Mike Seeger, and it's called My Uncle Died a Month Ago.
I'll have to look that up.
It's a good song.
Because he inherited the land. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. What do we got?
Okay. So, in New York City, in Long Island, a woman was, it says, sucked down into her parents' grave. She was there to put a wreath on the tombstone, and a sinkhole opened up under her, and she was sucked down into the grave to her waist. Bounced her head
scary.
on the tombstone. Well, here's what's interesting. Her quote, she says, her lawyer says, "Getting sucked into your parents' grave when you go to visit them on a cool December afternoon with the sun going down, it's terrifying and traumatizing."
I would say so. That would freak me out.
Sucked into your parents' grave under any circumstances whatsoever.
Right.
It's terrifying and traumatizing.
Because you're leaving home and you're thinking, my parents would be turning in their graves if they knew what I was doing.
Or
and then you go there and you get sucked in.
Sucked down in. Uh-oh, my parents still have a hold of me.
Hell, sucked into any grave, but especially your parents.
Yeah, your parents.
That's worse than catching your parents having sex.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
I just can't imagine that poor woman.
Jeez.
Okay. And finally, there's a cow on the loose near an Indiana Chick-fil-A. Some people thought that it was a Chick-fil-A advertising ruse.
Like a promo?
Yeah, it was in Noblesville, around Indianapolis, a city in the...
Oh, that's
the
close to you.
Kind of the northeast of Indianapolis. And a cow was stopping traffic. The police tried to chase it down. They never did catch it, at least from what I'm reading here.
What do you mean they never caught it?
It's unclear what ultimately happened.
All right,
to the
I'm
cow.
looking at a picture of it now. That's a big cow. That's like a bull.
I know.
That sucker's
but it
huge.
doesn't have any horns. But yeah, I don't see an udder there, so could be a bull. But
You know, one got loose in Cheviot.
oh, did one? Whose was it?
It was a Harvest Home parade, and Jason and his buddy Todd had gotten up early to go to Mass, and they were walking back from Mass, and the cops were driving around, and I think they saw it, and they waved over a cop and said, "There's a big white cow over there," and the cop's like, "Big white cow?" And they're like, "Yeah, there's a big white cow over there," and he kept saying it, "Big white cow." A big white cow.
he thought they were on drugs.
Yeah, no, well, they weren't that. They were like 10. Well, not 10. They were like 12-year-olds. Yeah, they were young kids. And
so he thought
kept
they were
telling
just.
him, "There's
they
a big
had
white
an
cow over
imagination,
there," and kept going, "Big white cow."
Well, you know, there was that time a couple of goats got loose in Cheviot too.
Oh yeah, I remember that because I had to go clean up their mess. They went up to the. We mentioned last week that we owned goats in the middle of the city, but they'd get
it's ours
loose.
we're talking about.
And they went up to the Ernst house, and they pooped all over the sidewalks.
Oh, wow.
And Dad made me go sweep it all up.
Yeah, I don't remember that. I remember Jim Bradfish.
Because you didn't have to clean it up.
Yeah. Well, you know, our neighbor who lived in the house you're living in now, he was so mad because they would get out and eat his tomatoes.
Oh, yeah. He was proud of those tomatoes, and the goats would wipe them all out in a matter of seconds.
I think he always thought Dad would let him out on purpose so that Dad could grow bigger tomatoes.
You know, if I get goats here, I'm going to grow tomatoes. I'm going to let them eat a year just in honor of Jim Bradfish.
All right. That's all I've got.
All right. Well, that puts us, like I said, it says an hour 15, but...
Yeah, but we had some technical problems
along
the way.
Cut out a lot of that. So it's kind of a short podcast today, but think about what we said and circle the bead.
Yep.
And we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.